things during drug raids should be used to benefit the black community. I completely agree with that. I remember just today when I was talking to the guy I told you about earlier, Tyrone Muhammad. One of the things we were talking about is how crazy it is that black people were the ones locked up for cannabis and all that, and still get locked up for it, and white people are now making billions from it because black people can't get licenses. So he says, in 1988, the FDA, Federal Drug Enforcement Agency, reported that it had confiscated properties worth nearly $700 million. dollars. These programs could produce revenue by converting inactive funds and property into funds directed toward the good of the community from which the funds came. The funds could be made available to black entrepreneurs through low interest, long term loans. The black businesses would pay interest and taxes to city government and create jobs. Four, local governments could offer land grants and head rights on abandoned ghetto properties to black individuals or corporations that need land for industrial or business development. Additionally, tax incentives, as discussed earlier, could encourage development. Number five, government could formulate partnerships with black businesses and industries by purchasing a specific amount of services and goods from black businesses situated within various municipal boundaries. Number six, government could also offer subsidies to black industries that hired hardcore unemployed and underemployed blacks. Funds could be redirected from funds currently used to pay government assistance to the needy in black communities and from the confiscation of funds described earlier. So what I'm getting from this paragraph in Dr. Anderson's book is that he's basically saying the government could be doing a whole lot more to support you in your goal towards self-sustainability. And what I am just convinced of is whenever the elections come around, I think it's really important that we don't get distracted. If they can distract you with fear, they're going to use fear. If they can distract you with racism, they're going to use racism. Some dog whistle. Don't listen to them because they're all a bunch of racists, or he calls somebody the N word. I encourage you to kind of let that go and simply sit down at the negotiating table and demand things that are going to actually move the community forward. If you go to a lot of communities in parts of Chicago where I'm from and look around, you will see that in those districts where they're voting for the same politicians over and over again, nothing is getting done. Those communities are not improving. They're getting absolutely 100% worse. The mayor of Chicago, I asked Tyrone Muhammad today, the guy I told you about who goes into our neighborhoods and cares about our kids and makes sure that they don't kill each other. I said, how does the mayor feel about you? He said, the mayor runs for me every time I come up because she knows that I'm serious about helping the black community, and they're not serious about helping the black community. They don't care nothing about the black community, but they're very happy to use the black community if they think you're stupid, right? So please give me a confirmation in the chat. All the non-stupid people, say something in the chat. Just say I ain't stupid. Say not me. Whatever. Now I'm not telling you who to vote for. I'm not telling you to vote or not to vote. I'm not telling you what to do. But let's just sort of be very intentional about saying that we're not gonna be stupid. I'm not a sheep. I'm not following and doing what they tell me to do just because they told me to do it. If it doesn't make sense, I'm not participating because I need to see progress. Period. So let's move on. Strategy number 9 is political empowerment. He says, what is the political system about? And why is the possession of political power important to a group? Group power is important because the distribution of economic, social rewards and benefits within the broad society is the major role of a political system. The group with the greatest political power will receive the greatest benefits. For nearly 400 years, the United States immigration policies, pay attention when they tell you how to vote on immigration. For 400 years, the U.S.'s immigration policies have been used to contain black populations at non-threatening and controllable levels. Black percentages exceeding 5 to 8% generated white backlashes. So when they tell you what to do on immigration, or you're turning on CNN and you hear some Negro on CNN telling you that you need to go along with whatever the Democrats told you to believe about immigration, just understand there is a history. This is Black History Month. So this is some Black history, page 203. The book is Black Labor, White Wealth. So Black history is that it is confirmed that immigration policies have always been used to maintain control of the black community, to make sure you never got too big for your political britches. that you never got so big that you actually have a lot of weight in this society. Let's keep going. In a democratic society founded on the principle that the majority wins, the racial or ethnic group with the largest population always gets its way. National immigration policies in the integration process have restricted black immigrants from entering the country and scattered them as minorities among whites. Such practices have consigned blacks to a constant numerical minority and therefore to a perpetual loser status. So you vote yourself into being the loser in every single game. And what is interesting to me is that it's here's I'm gonna tell y'all something about racism that's probably gonna surprise you. Give me 1 second. Let me turn my fan off. Well, it's not really a fan. It's actually a space heater, and because of what I'm saying here is gonna make me hot, and I don't want to get too hot in this room and start sweating and stuff. Here's the thing about racism that's really interesting to me. White people falsely believe, and many of us falsely believe, that white people have to be racist in order to oppress you. Like that they have to sort of have this intentionality, that they have to get up in the morning. This is the narrative that you're fed in the media. This idea that there's like a white police officer who just gets up every day. All of them get up saying, "How am I going to shoot a black person today?" Every white Karen, every Trump supporter wakes up and says, "How do we oppress black people? We got to keep black people in their place," right? Yeah, and that is such a false statement in so many ways, beginning with the fact that I don't believe that white people wake up thinking about me at all. I think that they do what a lot of human beings do, which is they think about themselves. Now, they might be scared of me, maybe they don't understand me, and they definitely don't agree with me. But I don't think they wake up saying, "How am I going? Let me go find out where Boyce is at, so I can just make sure Boyce is oppressed or that Boyce is mistreated or whatever, or that I can hurt Boyce's feelings." Right? Not that they could, but I don't think that's really their agenda. What happens in America, the reason that you see the oppression, I would argue, is because it's not because they wake up intentionally thinking about how they can oppress you. It's because they can oppress you by simply living their normal happy white lives and doing what white people want to do, right? Because there's so many of them, they just get to do whatever they want. I'll give you an example. It's like one time I was in a room with some family members, and there were like 8 guys, and there was 1 woman, and my cousin, the one woman, she said, "I felt so mistreated by you guys in that room. I felt so oppressed." And I said, "What are you talking about? I wasn't trying to oppress you. What do you mean?" She says, "Well, that's the problem. You were just being a bunch of guys and doing whatever you watched whatever guys wanted to watch on TV. So I sat there and had to watch football the whole time. You talked about whatever guys talk about because you didn't even see me because there was 1 of me and there was 8 of you." Right? So we were oppressing her as the lone woman in the room without even thinking about oppressing her. The oppression came from the fact that because we had the majority, we didn't even have to acknowledge her in some way. I mean, it sounds terrible, but it's kind of true. We were just sitting there just doing whatever dudes do. Like, "Yeah, man, let's turn on the game. Let's watch the rest of the Cowboys game." Right? So white people oppress you because they just simply have the majority, and they have all the money and they have all the power. So then what happens is your black butt gets that job. You're like the first like middle manager of machine operating at Ford, right? You're the first black manager they've ever had out of 60, and you're in this room and you're and everybody votes on what they want to do next, and your vote doesn't count because there's 1 of you and 59 of them. Right? That's what happens, right? I don't think that they're sitting there saying, "Dang, how are we going to make sure that the black person in this room is uncomfortable?" I think they're simply saying, "Hey, we're just going to do what we want to do." Like sometimes when you're powerful, when you're the elephant isn't aiming to step on the fly. He just does because he doesn't even notice. It's like the fly is just under his foot because he's an elephant and you're a fly, right? So to some extent, politically and economically, you're kind of the fly to their elephant, and you have to acknowledge that in order to say, how do I fix that? How do I fix that? Right? So a lot of this oppression, a lot of this so-called racism, I would argue comes down to the fact that there are more spaces in this country where white people just have so much damn power that when they just get together and decide something's gonna happen, it's gonna happen. Look at the news. Like, think about how many topics you and I have talked about on this platform that the whole country needs to be talking about. Seriously, like we talk about black kids being killed in the hood. I've talked about it 18,000 times. Everybody should be talking about it, but it ain't gonna get talked about till CNN decides to talk about it. Then suddenly the whole country's talking about it. Like, oh my God, did you hear about the kids that just started getting killed in Chicago? They've been getting killed, idiot. That didn't just start. It just started because you just started to acknowledge it. Now that you've acknowledged it, then suddenly it's a thing, right? And so ultimately, that sort of power should at least make you conscious of the spaces within which you operate. I personally don't even have an interest in operating in a space where I can't identify with the value system of the people who are in control of that space. I ain't got to be in control of the space, but I need to be able to identify with the value systems of the majority of people that are in that space. That's why you won't see me announcing to you that I just took a job at some corporation where it's going to be 99 white people and me. Like, that's not going to work because I'm too different from them. I don't think they're bad people. They just have their values. I have mine. Those two don't align. Right? So think about the spaces that you operate in, because that affects the degree to which you feel oppressed. When I'm in my black-owned business, it ain't the biggest business in the world, but in my business, we all kind of agree with each other. Like, if I say, gosh, we need to build our own schools because our kids aren't being educated for shit, everybody's going to say, amen. Ooh, you know, that's right. Yeah, I agree. What are we going to do next? Right? I won't be in some space where I'm like at some stupid public school where they literally think that the best thing that a black kid can get is a nice, healthy white education. They really believe that crap. They really believe their own nonsense. Right? So because I see the world differently, I think it's very important for you to be conscious about what spaces you navigate and to know that you always have a choice. You ain't gotta go through life as a minority. It's no fun to be a minority. Minorities are tiny and little, and nobody hears the minority because you're so minor and you're so irrelevant. You're like a little squeaky mouse on the floor, and everybody else is roaring, and you're just like, I'm a minority. I have something to say, and nobody's hearing you because you didn't think about what spaces you were willing to walk into. Think about those spaces, and if you can't find a space to walk into, then that's where things like entrepreneurship come into play, because you can build a space. You can build a space. You know, that's entrepreneurs know how to build spaces. That's why it's very important for every black person to become an entrepreneur. I can keep talking about that, but I'm not going to. I'm going to keep reading. All right. So page 203. The book is Black Labor, White Wealth by Dr. Claude Anderson. You can get a copy at poweronomics.com. So he says, in a democratic society founded on the principle that the majority wins, the racial or ethnic group with the largest population always gets its way. After emancipation, blacks struggled harder than any other group in the country to overcome barriers erected to prevent their participation in the political process. Voter registration and education drives were major components. Sorry, guys. Whenever I choke a little bit and cough, I always sneeze. Of the civil rights movement. The black vote became a decisive factor in all levels of elections. Blacks could proudly take credit for electing white candidates as members of state legislatures, mayors, governors, and presidents. They were equally successful in delivering black candidates to public office. However, increased political gains did not mean improved conditions for blacks. This is that real black history. Analysis. 1. The Voting Rights Act of 1965 increased black voting strength and opened the doors to unprecedented growth in the number of black elected officials. Unfortunately, I like that, I'm gonna circle that. The material benefits to blacks did not increase in proportion to the increase in black representation. Even in large urban areas with a strong tradition of black participation in local, state, and national government, it appears that material dividends to blacks have either been minimal or non existent. Judging by the meager rewards and benefits that blacks have received from the political system, the real question now is, should blacks continue to participate in politics as they have in the past? Very good question, Dr. Anderson. Let's see what else he has to say. Number two, throughout history, black office holders have been neither numerous nor especially influential. Most entered and left office without altering black America's conditions. So your black politicians don't give a damn about you. We got one in Chicago named Lori Lightfoot. I call her Gory Leadfoot because she looked like Fred G. Sanford III. She's a really unattractive lady, and she sits there with her white wife and doesn't do a damn thing for black folks. The Chicago is just as bad off as it was before she got into office. But anyway, I digress. More often, they lack power and direction and have few resources from which they could draw support. 3, there has been little quid pro quo for blacks who put candidates into public office. Part of that is your fault. It's not just their fault. Part of it's your fault because you don't negotiate. Ice Cube came along and had a great plan. I loved what Ice Cube did with his power. He said, look, I'm not a politician. I'm not a political scientist. I'm just a rapper with a big platform. Let me go ahead and empower some black scholars and thinkers. That's probably why Ice Cube wasn't performing at the Super Bowl, because they don't want intelligent black people on the stage. They need black folks that are going to go along and get along and do what they're told, right? So that's probably why you, instead of getting Ice Cube at the show, which would have been great, you got that chubby upside down 50 Cent hanging from whatever he was hanging from. You're 46, man. You don't need to be hanging upside down. You done gained a lot of weight. You can't do things at 46 that you did at 26. That's a note to 50 Cent. Not that he's not great, but dude, come on now. Anyway, so I believe that's why Ice Cube didn't perform at the Super Bowl. I really do. I think he wasn't invited because that's the cost of representing your people. That the people who really don't like you that much, they distance themselves from those who step up on your behalf. So that's why it's very important to support anybody who's in the mainstream that does do something meaningful for black people. So anyway, let me keep going. So he says, throughout history, black office holders have been neither numerous nor especially influential. He says also there has been little quid pro quo for blacks who put candidates into public office. This results primarily from the fact that white society controls nearly all aspects of government, and it will not easily let government be used to help blacks. Another drawback is black political appointees. The reality of the political process makes it easier for them to bury themselves in the business of taking care of the general public's business rather than proposing issues and programs to specifically improve the quality of life for blacks. They feel safer being good public servants rather than black employees with an agenda of their own. There's often little noticeable difference between them and their non-black predecessors or counterparts. They lose sight of the reasons that blacks fought for their right to vote. Blacks do not vote solely for good government. They vote for candidates who they think will bring them proportional returns. When elected officials or their appointees fail to support the black people's public interest, blacks must do whatever is necessary to bring the candidate and his appointees to task. That includes even your favorite black politicians. 4, politicians are becoming more open to expressing opposition to black issues. They sense that these issues have been successfully closeted or placed on the back burner. After a major election's over, mainstream society expresses fatigue from hearing about race issues. Blacks comfort them by discussing mainstream issues in public and political forums. The Republican Party, for instance, espouses that it is not interested in increasing black membership under their Big Tent platform. In truth, their interest in black voters stops at the point where they feel that they have to have diluted the block of votes that traditionally supports the Democratic Party. They don't want to attract hordes of blacks because they do not want to tarnish themselves with too many black Republicans. So their racism is on the left and it's on the right. If a massive number of blacks registered as Republicans, most whites would become Democrats. If a large number of blacks registered as Democrats, most whites would become Republicans. If blacks split their registration evenly between the Democrat and Republican parties, whites would be very happy. If blacks developed a national plan and began acquiring self-sufficiency, wealth, and power, whites would be unable to predict the black vote and would be forced to develop other strategies. So what does that say to you? Let's meditate on that for a moment. Let's do what my therapist friend says and have a moment of mindfulness where we take 1 second and analyze the last 3 sentences of that paragraph. The last 3 sentences were, not even the last 3 sentences. Let me just read the last 1 sentence. If blacks developed a national plan and began acquiring self-sufficiency, wealth, and power, whites would be unable to predict the black vote and would be forced to develop other strategies. So here is the B1 Intelligent Black People National Plan. Everybody doesn't qualify to be B1. Everybody does not qualify to be an intelligent black person. So some of you may be the delegate representing your family because you may have a family full of buffoons. Let's just be honest. Some of y'all relatives ain't ready. It's okay. It's okay. So here's what I need you to consider. 2 things I'm going to lay out for you to consider, and it's up to you to decide if you want to adopt these ideas. 1, I don't give a rat's butt who you vote for in the next election. I do not give a half a damn. If somebody goes out, if you are walking down the street and somebody says, well, Dr. Boyce, he's an old Republican. Dr. Boyce sounds like he's a Republican. Then you say, no, Dr. Boyce is not he's not walking around as a Republican. Or they say, Dr. Boyce, he's like those liberals. He's like those Democrats, those Biden supporters. What's wrong with him? He's always talking that liberal. Don't say, no, Dr. Boyce doesn't identify that as that. I'm just here. I just exist. I do not get excited. I pay attention to the elections and I love to talk about it because that's what matters to a lot of our people. But I know. So I don't care who you vote for. Democrats are welcome to this conversation. Republicans, you're welcome here as well. Independents, you are welcome too. Green Party, you are welcome. Libertarians, you are welcome. As long as you're B1, as long as you're black first, then that's all I need to know. Number 2, a national plan of acquiring self-sufficiency, wealth, and power. Very basic idea. It means that as a community, we must embrace black economic power as a second religion. It literally must be something that we are requiring ourselves to address with each other, to address with our kids. That means basic knowledge about ownership of stock. We're buying stock for our children at birth, ownership of real estate. I don't want to be, I'm not here to make my landlord rich. I need to be the owner of some land or some property at some point. That is my long-term goal. And if I can't do it, I'm going to make sure my kids do it. Starting a business for our basic survival. Our kids learn how to start businesses by the age of 12, and then they get those businesses funded by people in the community who understand that vision. They have an exit plan, an underground railroad to get away from that job in case they decide that they came to work and they want to kick their boss's ass. Don't kick his ass. Don't cuss him out. Just tell him what you think, or don't even say a word. Just walk out the door and know that you've got something better waiting for you. Life is always better when you have options. That options are the cousin to freedom. Freedom and options are like siblings. They're deeply related to each other. If you have options, then you have freedom. You always talk about freedom, but how the hell are you going to talk about freedom when you ain't never had no options? How is a slave going to sit around talking all day and using the word freedom? Take that word out your mouth if you act like a damn slave. Slaves are ignorant. Slaves don't have options. Slaves don't make long-term plans. Slaves don't have the discipline that can be invoked on themselves. They have to be forced to be disciplined. They can't be disciplined on their own. So if you acting like a slave, then stop using the word freedom, because freedom is not for a slave. Because if you are a slave and you're talking about freedom, then basically you're saying to the person who has enslaved you that you need them to make you free. Stop asking white people to free you. They're not going to do it. I wouldn't do it if I was them. So why do you think that they're going to do it for you? They're not. You have to take it. You take it by creating options. You take it by acquiring knowledge. You take it by making a long-term strategic plan. If you plan, I talk to my daughter every day. I ask her, I say, what are the 3 P's of success? She says, practice, practice, perseverance, and preparation. Practice, perseverance, and preparation. I said, if you do those 3 things, that'll carry you through anything. You know what I'm doing? I'm preparing her for my death. In case I die one day, I want to be in her ear for the rest of her life so that when she runs into a situation where the world has her trapped, she's going to go back to the 3 Ps. If the more I practice, the stronger I'll be. The more I prepare, the better ready I'll be for war. And the more persistent I am, the more I can knock down those obstacles. It's literally that simple. So when you talk about a national power plan for self-sufficiency, that must come from us and must be implemented by us. We don't have to ask for anybody's permission. We do not need it to be taught in school. It does not need to be part of a government program. It doesn't have to be funded by anybody. All of the funding, the $1 trillion in funding necessary to implement this national plan is going to come from your soul. And your soul has much more value than money. I'm not talking about a financial investment. I'm talking about an investment in the culture. I'm talking about shifting the culture into something that is going to create the kind of power base that we need to make everybody move out the way when we walk in the room. If you have true power, you don't really need to go around yelling and screaming and crying and acting a fool. You don't have to do all of that. You just have power. And I'm going to end actually on the note that I started with. When I met this brother I told you about in Chicago, Tyrone Muhammad, he walked in the room. I saw power. I saw a guy who was no nonsense. That's a type of power. So I want you to train yourselves and practice simply being powerful. When you're powerful, you ain't got to run around hating nobody. I don't have to hate white people to be powerful. The more I hate you, the more I complain about you, the more I'm kind of admitting that you're more powerful than me. So be powerful and have a plan. And then let the politics do what they're going to do. Vote for who you want to vote for. That is secondary to your power play. And the power play is something you can implement in your house. You don't need anybody's permission to do this, not even me. I'm just an advisor. I'm not a black leader. I'm just an advisor. I'm one of the advisors in your cabinet saying, hey, this is something you might want to think about. But at the end of the day, you're making that decision. So what's going to be your power play for your family? I want you to think about that, okay? All right, guys. I'm going to go ahead and shut it down for today. I hope that this conversation has been beneficial to you. I have enjoyed this very, very much. And I think we've given ourselves enough to think about for next week. And so we're going to meet again next Wednesday at 8:30 p.m. Eastern. And I look forward to seeing all of you. And just a reminder, if you go to BoyceWatkins.com, I think we have a few Black Wealth calendars left. So if you want to get a calendar, you don't have to, but if you want to get one, you can feel free to go to BoyceWatkins.com or join the stock market investing class or whatever it is you want to do to participate in some of the things we have going on. So God bless you guys. Be one to everybody. Love you. And I will see you soon. Okay. Have a good night, guys. Bye-bye.